Hey guys, it's MrNoDStudios and welcome back. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to play SuperPower 2. I'm going to be showing you around the basics of the budgets, the basics of economy, the basics of military. This game really isn't that hard to learn how to play. You've just got to put a few hours in it. I know it looks really bad at first glance, but trust me, it is actually a really easy game to learn how to play. So we're just gonna go ahead and start up a game here, and I'm thinking of playing as a northeastern European country. So I believe a good country to play as this would be like, we could go with like Latvia or Estonia. I think one of those would be a very good country to go ahead and just show you the very basics of this game. So we could be Latvia, and we can be the... Jesus, man. Latvia has a lot of freaking parties. Holy crap. We'll just be the Social Democratic Workers' Party. Why not? And then we'll go ahead and start. So here is little old Latvia. The game starts in 2001 in January the 1st, of course. So the very beginning of 2001. And I highly recommend that you go ahead and right off the bat, right click, go to Thematic Maps, and then this is where all of your maps are. You probably are just going to want to stay on either political control or diplomatic relations. One of those two map modes is going to be ideal. I usually use diplomatic relations just so I can see how well I am doing with the world, and just to see if I haven't too far alienated myself from the rest of the world. Because you do have to pay close attention to your relations, but playing on the political control map mode isn't that bad either if you know your diplomatic relations are under control. I would just check the diplomatic relations tab once in a while and make sure everyone in the world does not hate you. So, that's just my tip there. And then, of course, you have all these other thematic maps that you can use to give you various informationes. Like, you have a GDP map mode, and obviously, like, Western Europe and America and Canada, they have really high GDPs, while you look at, like, Mongolia, they have a really shitty GDP. And then you can also track GDP growth. So, as you can see, a lot of these thematic maps are actually very useful. And then you can look at human development, all sorts of good stuff. But for our purposes here, voice crack. For our purposes here, I'm just going to use the diplomatic relations mode because that's what I usually play on. So in the More Informations tab down here by our country name, and you can actually select any country you want here. By default, it's going to select the country that you chose at the beginning of the game. So, and then you can click More Info, and you can see your human development level, your infrastructure level, and your telecommunications level. And you can also see the age of your population. And then you can also view arable land, forests, national parks, and the amount of unusable land in your country. Now, the amount of arable land is actually pretty important, and your infrastructure and telecommunications, as well as your human development level, are pretty important. Now, your human development level, it's not so much important. You can kind of let that go down, but if you are playing as a Western country, you're always going to be up. Your human development level is always going to be higher than someone else's, just because that's the nature of the game. But if you're playing as, like, a Central African country, and you're really fucking poor, your human development level is terrible, you're going to want to set up some human development treaties. And that's the next thing I guess I'll go into here, right? So we can select Germany, and we can right-click and go into Quick Treaty, and these are all the treaties that we can make in the game. So we can have an alliance with Germany, although I don't think they'd really accept that. I mean, we can send it, but yeah, no. You have to be very friendly with a country for you to be able to ally with them, but if you're playing as, like, Germany or France, you will be a part of the European Union. So, you'll be allied with most of Europe. But if you want to ally someone and you're not a part of the European Union, you have to have really, really, really amazing relations to be able to do that. And, of course, you can go ahead and assume debt, common market, economic stuffs, all that good stuff in there. That's pretty self-explanatory, so I won't go into too much depth with that. Now, over here, this little thing that I just opened up, this is all your information logs. It'll tell you when things get denied, if your country is being sabotaged, things like that. Pretty self-explanatory there as well. And then over here, you can view the history of your country. You can track the, unit upkeep over a period of time. You can track your corruption over a period of time. You can track your telecoms over a period of time. I don't find myself using that thing too often, but if you want to, it's there. And over here, in this little, computer tab, you have your sphere control, and this is where you can set basically what you want to be controlled in your country, either by yourself or automatically. I usually just keep everything on manual. I find that to be the most fun, and I really don't see a point of letting the AI, who's going to do a worse job than me, control my country. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, over here in the bottom left, these are our 3 main tabs. This is how we are going to be playing the game. Alrighty, so we can go ahead and start off with the political tab over here in the bottom left. It's the guy with the podium, and our constitutional form. Now, the best constitutional form overall to go with is the multi-party democracy, and you can change it to any one of these. You can change your constitutional form to any one of these at any time, although no matter what you change it to, you will always have a hit in stability when you do change it. And then you can also change the capital of your nation. It's not really going to matter. I really don't think your capital matters whatsoever in this, but hey, if you want to be the United States and make your capital like freaking Minnesota or some shit, you can. So that is pretty amazing. And then you can also override elections, but I believe that puts you into a military dictatorship. And you can also declare martial law. So there is that. Overall, multi-party democracies are the best. I'm not going to dive into too much detail about what each constitutional form does. In the description, however, I will go ahead and put a link that will redirect you to a website which will tell you exactly what each constitutional form does. But in the short run, multi-party democracy is the best. Following behind it is the single party, and I'm going to say the communist state isn't that bad either. But, like I said, that'll be in the description if you want to take further detail at that. Alrighty, so the next thing over here is our little ideology meter, as well as our internal laws. Now, your ideology meter over here actually accounts for quite a lot. Say I am a relatively leftist nation, which I am not. I'm actually pretty centrist, leaning to the right quite a bit. But say I was really leftist, and we can go to, France, who's really leftist, or we can go to Spain, who's even more leftist. Now, based upon how far left or right we are is going to determine who we are going to be friends with. And we can modify how far left or right we are on the political spectrum by modifying our internal laws. So if I have the same exact ideological level as Spain, I'm going to gain relations a lot faster with Spain than I will with anyone else. So you always want to keep that in mind. So if you're trying to be friendly with Europe and you're a third world country, ban child labor, allow people to demonstrate, allow freedom of demonstration, allow freedom of speech, allow women's suffrage. Do that, and then Western nations will start to love you. Although, beware, third world nations who don't have those ideals are going to freaking hate you. So you do have to kind of balance that. And also, some internal laws affect the way your game is. So, for instance, child labor, if you permit that will give you a 10% resource boost to every single resource, which is actually really freaking good. That is an amazing boost. But I find that if you enable it, it screws over your relations with Western nations, and you really do not want to do that. So I usually just keep it off. I think it's better to just keep it off. So yeah, freedom of speech, freedom of demonstration, very, very, very self-explanatory things in here. I'm just gonna go ahead and legalize abortion and same-sex marriage because that's gonna move us further to the left. And, hey, it gave us a little bit of approval. So, yeah, by adjusting your internal laws, that will change how far left or right you are, obviously, and it might even give you a little bit of approval. So, if you're yearning for some approval, you could legalize freedom of speech and freedom of demonstration if you already don't, or you could just look through here and go ahead and permit some of these things. Also, you can make other political parties within your country illegal to try and eliminate some of the competition within your country. Now, as long as your approval rating is above 60%, realistically, you're going to get re-elected if you are a multi-party democracy. It's just, if your approval's above 60%, you really have nothing to worry about. There is no point in legitimizing any other parties. Just keep your approval up and you'll be fine as a multi-party. But that option is there if you want to kind of make your own role-play scenario, which can be very fun. Also, up here, you can see all the religions of your nation. You can choose to set an official one, and if we choose to set the Lutherans as our official religion, that will actually boost our approval rating because most of the people in our nation are Lutheran. And we can also make religions illegal. Now, say we were to make Russian Orthodoxy illegal. That would slowly decrease the percentage of Russian Orthodox in our country, and they would convert into another legal religion. So they would either become Roman Catholic or Lutheran. Now, if we were to set Roman Catholics and Russian Orthodoxes to illegal, then everyone would convert to Lutheran, and slowly, after some time, we would have a 100% Lutheran religious population. Now, for Western nations, that really doesn't mean shit. Having a homogenous society really doesn't matter for shit. So, yeah, it's not really a problem for Western nations. However, if you go to, like, the Democratic Republic of Congo right here, if you have all of your populations practicing different religions, it really will hurt you. It's going to drop your stability. It's going to drop your approval. So if you are a third world nation, you might actually want to just go ahead and get everyone on board with one religion. Now, remember, illegitimizing a religion is going to make other countries hate you. So if you illegitimize Christianity, then all the Christian nations are going to freaking hate you. If you illegitimize Islam, then all of the Muslim nations are going to hate you. So you have to keep that stuff in mind when you are doing this, because if everyone in the world hates you, they're going to start sabotaging you, and then your economy is going to be stunted. You're going to be shitting your pants. So yeah, that's not good. Also, on the bottom here, you can make immigration illegal. You can close your borders, and you can also make emigration illegal. So you can close your borders there, or you can keep them opened. That is completely up to you. It might be a smart idea to leave immigration open and then emigration closed, just so people aren't leaving your country. Now, I find that, you know, I play with a very low healthcare spending budget, so that emigration number tends to get up there. But, yeah, you can definitely close that to go ahead and try and stop people from leaving your country. Alrighty, and then over here, it's pretty much the same deal with languages as it is for religions. But yeah, that's basically the internal laws thing. And then over here, most of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. We have approval, pressure. If you are a Western nation, you don't really ever have to deal with pressure. But if you are a third world nation, that will come into account. But we're just going to focus on what Western nations are going to focus on, or, you know, what they're going to deal with. So yeah, and then you have your stability and your corruption rating. Alright, so the next tab is your military tab. You can view your overall rank in the world. You can buy various units from the black market. They are very cheap, and it's a very good way to get a large army, although you are going to get a pretty shit army, especially later on in the game. And if you do choose to buy out all of these units, then later on in the game, the black market for troops is going to be very empty, and you're going to eventually have to resort to building your own troops, which is where this build menu comes into place. Now, you can see that I don't have really anything in here. I can train infantry, and that is about it. So, to be able to train up anything else, I have to go ahead and go into my unit research. Actually, well, first of all, we have to go into design, and then we can make a new design, and we can make a tank design. But the thing is, we don't have any of this research because we're Latvia, and yeah. Anyways, but yeah, if we were, say, to have this all research, then we can go ahead and select what we want. We can go ahead and change the color, whatnot. We could give it a name, and then we could confirm it, and then we would be able to go into the build menu and create it. But under the research menu. So this is where you can set financing. Now, what I recommend you do is set down financing for naval and air. So you want to have your ground financing at the most. Now, Navy tends to not be that important, at least for what I do. If you are playing as a country like Canada, Navy is definitely going to be important to you, so you might actually want to bump up your naval financing. However, if you're going to go for, say, third world countries, you're really not going to need a strong Navy, so you got to balance this to your needs. This is how I usually find out, usually find myself balancing things out, however. So this is what works best for me, per se, but you might need different needs, so just adjust things to how you're gonna need it. So there's that. That's pretty much the whole military tab. Yeah. Other than the strategic forces in here, you can go ahead and research. Oh, actually, we probably shouldn't do that. Wait, it is impossible to research nuclear technology because it would put our country in economic failure. Okay, so we're too poor to research nukes. Now, that's great. Anyways, yeah, so the strategic forces are nukes. So if you hit research on that, then in here you will unlock the strategic financing area, and then you can start researching nukes, and then you can start building nukes. And then missile defense, it's pretty self-explanatory, you can build that. Now, if you do choose to research nukes or missile defense, it will make every single country in the world hate you. Countries are not going to like it if you get nukes. They don't want other countries getting nukes, obviously. So, they aren't going to like that. So, I recommend if you are going to research nukes and you're going to research missile defense, do it when everyone in the world likes you, so that way everyone's not anal, and then you start getting, spied on and sabotaged left and right. Because once that starts happening, once you start getting spied on and people start sabotaging your shit, it's very, very, very hard to get out of that rut. Trust me, it is. It's extremely hard to get out of that rut. So don't place yourself there in the first place. And then we have the Covert Actions. So these are our covert cells. We can go ahead and move ourselves to whatever country in the world we want, and then we can set up a mission. So we can spy on someone, we can sabotage their stuff, we can assassinate them, and we can do terrorism. And then, of course, we can change the complexity, and we can frame a country if we want to. Now, please note that if you do frame a country and your mission fails, both of the countries, so the country that you targeted and the framed country, will end up hating you. However, if you are successful, the framed country will end up hating your targeted country, and you really won't lose any relations there. So just keep that in mind. So there's that. I recommend you leave open one fully trained cell. Like, you can train these guys up 3 times. I recommend you keep open one fully trained cell at all times, even if you're at peace, and the rest set to dormant unless you're going to need them for something else. Or you could just disband them, because these guys end up taking quite a bit of money, so just set them to dormant if you're not using them, if you're not in a war or anything like that. Alrighty, so that's pretty much it for there. I mean, there's a war list. You can see who's at war, who's allied with you, and what not. Alrighty, so on to the economic little tab here. This is probably, arguably, the most important tab of the game, you're going to be coming back and forth to this tab quite frequently. So in here, if we go ahead and click more on economic health, we can see our GDP, our gross domestic product, and then per capita, if you're not familiar with this, is basically if everything were totally equal, this would be how much each person is making. So each person in our country is making a salary of $7K a year, just over $7K a year, which isn't too bad. That's some work can be done, okay? That 7K GDP isn't that great, but it isn't terrible. But it does need improving on, definitely. So, down below that, we can actually see our personal income tax. Now, this is going to be your main source of income. You're not going to want to use business taxes, but we'll get into that later when we get down to the resources tab over here. And then also you have your unemployment rate and your poverty rate, which in Latvia is freaking ridiculous. 60.7%, my bad, people are under the poverty line, which is absolutely fucking terrible. Yeah, that's gonna need to change. And then also you have your inflation. Now, the best thing to do right off the bat with your inflation right here is to just go ahead and set your inflation, or your interest level rather, at 0%. Go ahead and set that down to 0%. If you are a Western nation, if you're playing as like the Democratic Republic of Congo, you might not want to set your inflation down to 0 because that poses some problems if you are a third world country. But if you are a Western country, then go ahead and set your interest level down to 0, because the highest your inflation rate can go up to is 9.9%, which isn't that bad. It's usually going to float around 6%, which is ideal. That's where you want it. 9.9% isn't exactly where you want it. It's not the sweet spot by any means, but it is definitely a good place to be. It's not that bad. Your government expenses increase as you get more inflation, but you also get more profits if you have the right amount of inflation. So you'll be getting more from taxes if you have the correct percentage of inflation. If you have, say, a negative inflation rate, then your businesses will be producing less money. So, ideally, you want to have it anywhere between, like, 5 and 10, I'm going to say. Anywhere in between there is pretty decent. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and set that to 0, and then we're going to set our personal income tax up to 60%. You can have your personal income tax modifier go up to 80%. I do not recommend that at all, whatsoever. Only go up to 80% if you are fighting in a war, or if you plan on maxing out all of your sliders here in the budget tab. Only ever go up to 80% though. I mean, you can go up to 90, that's really pushing it, but only do that if you're like at war with the whole world and you really need some more money. Other than that, do not go above 80. Really do not. But going up to 80 isn't necessarily harmful. Raising your personal income tax to 60%, that's not necessarily harmful to your economy if you have low business taxes. Though, if you do have a low personal income tax, that will positively benefit your economy, so keep that as low as you can. But in the beginning here, we're going to need to raise that up because we're going to need money. So there you go. We raised that up to 60%, as you see there, and we've actually cut our deficit in half already just by doing that, which is freaking amazing. Alright, so next we're going to go into the budget tab here, and first of all, let me explain everything. So infrastructure will affect your infrastructure rating in the more info tab, and this will basically increase the productivity of your resources and your businesses. So you want to have infrastructure as high as possible. Now, propaganda, that will increase your approval rating, which has recently dropped because we increased taxes. That is another thing to pay attention to. If you are a single-party democracy, if your approval rating gets below 20, then you should probably worry. You should probably put a little bit into propaganda, so that way your guys don't get restless and revolt and you lose control endgame. But if you are a multi-party democracy, around election time, you want to have 60% approval or above. If you're below that, bump up your propaganda spending. But if you are above 60%, then just go ahead and actually knock out propaganda spending. So we can completely knock that out. And as you can see, that can cost us upwards of 187 million, which for Latvia is really a lot of money. So if we just eliminate propaganda completely, that's going to give us a shit ton of money. Now the thing with also doing this is that other countries don't like it when you use a lot of propaganda. So if you're like North Korea or something like that, and you're just spewing all sorts of largesse, you've got all this propaganda everywhere, other countries are going to freaking hate you. They are absolutely going to hate you. So, you know, just try and keep propaganda as low as possible. But that isn't to say necessarily that if you bump this all the way up, other countries are going to kill you, they're going to go to war with you. But ideally, the lower your propaganda spending is, the more other countries are going to like you. Alrighty, so environment over here, this gives a boost to all of your food and agriculture production. So, you want to have environment really high, especially if you are a country like Canada over here. If we go into the more info tab of Canada, and I'm actually currently doing a Let's Play of Canada as SuperPower, in SuperPower, so if you want to check that out, there will be a annotation right here, so go ahead and check out my SuperPower 2 Canadian Let's Play. But yeah, as you can see, Canada has a really low percentage of arable land, so getting your environmental spending up as a country like Canada is very, very important, because you don't have a lot of area to actually do agriculture in. So that's very, very important. So basically, environmental spending is good for your economy. Keep it as high as you can. Yet again, you know, try not to go negative with your budget, but just keep environment up there. It is definitely very, very important. Now, the next thing is healthcare. What healthcare does is it will lower your death rate and heighten your birth rate. So, this isn't really a big problem unless your death rate is more than your birth rate, which, as Latvia, it is. However, healthcare is fucking ridiculously expensive. So, if you can push it all the way down to, like, there, you're gonna make mad bank. If you're gonna have healthcare spending actually in the green, it's gonna cost you a shit ton of money. And you're gonna have to bump up your personal income tax modifier. So, I tend to keep healthcare really low, at least until my economy gets under control and I start making a little bit more money. And then I can raise healthcare spending. Excuse me. But yeah, in the beginning, just lower healthcare spending as low as possible. Like, we could even, I wouldn't completely get rid of it, but just lower it really, really badly. As Latvia, this can actually become a huge problem, though, if we don't deal with our birth rate and death rate problem. Over time, that will actually come back to bite us in the ass. But if you're playing as a country like the US, which, you know, the birth rate to death rate ratio isn't really that bad, or like Canada or something like that, then definitely lower your healthcare spending in the beginning. Now, I tend to just keep it like this the whole entire game. The really long-term benefit, or rather, not the benefit, the lack of benefit, of having your healthcare slider all the way down is that over time, your population is going to go down. And if you keep it low forever, it's going to go down really fast. But that is only really long term. So just keep that in mind. Really, just keep that in mind. I tend to keep healthcare spending really low. I think you should as well. It really isn't that important. It really is not. Alright, so on to the next topic, education. Now, what education does is, if you have it above the green, it will give a bonus to your services tab in here, in your resources. So it'll give a bonus to construction, engineering, health and care, retail, legal services, and market and advertising. It'll give a bonus to all of those, a production bonus. So the higher your education spending is, the more of a bonus you will have in those areas. Now, the services aren't really that important, so if you do have to lower education to go ahead and pull in a surplus, definitely do that. But once again, it's like environment and it's like infrastructure. You want education as high as you can because that's going to positively affect your economy. Now, I might actually lower our educational spending just a tad bit there. You know, like I said, services aren't that important. Really, your main thing is food and agriculture. You obviously have to keep your guys fed, and then energy, but services aren't that important. Health and care kind of is, but all the rest of them really aren't. So yeah, just you want to keep that as high as you can. I'm just gonna say that. And then telecoms, that modifies your telecoms percentage, obviously, and you want to have this as high as you can. We can just actually max out telecoms, and that is going to positively benefit your economy. I'm not exactly sure what it does, but just keep it maxed, guys. Keep it maxed if you can. And the thing about telecoms is it's really freaking cheap. It is dirt cheap to keep your telecom spending at max. So definitely do that. And then the next thing after that is government. So your government spending will dictate your stability at the, you know, the rate that your stability will increase. If you have high government spending, your stability will increase faster. And it also plays a role in your corruption. So if your government spending's all the way down here, your corruption's going to go up like crazy, and you're going to turn into like freaking China over here. Actually, well, their corruption problem isn't as bad as ours is. You'll turn into Russia or some other country. I think the DR. No. Well, actually, well, we're really bad on the corruption scale. But yeah, the higher your government spending is, the lower your corruption will be, and the higher your stability will be in layman's terms. So we want to keep government spending right about there. You want to find the balance. Since we have a really high rate of corruption, we're going to want to pump out government spending so that way we can get rid of that, because as you see down here, fixed expenses, if you take a look at corruption, that's costing us as much as our debt is, which is pretty ridiculous. So if you can eliminate corruption, you can actually eliminate quite a bit of money from your budget. So definitely keep government spending as high as possible. If you are going negative and you really need to cut something, your corruption is pretty low, then go ahead and cut government. But if your corruption's really high, you need to get rid of it. Bump up your government spending. Alright, so next thing, foreign aid. I would recommend keeping this up a little bit, because this dictates your relations with other countries. If your foreign aid is really high, it will increase the rate at which your relations increase with other countries. So basically, the higher you have your foreign aid slider, the more countries will like you, and the lower you have it, the less countries will like you. So pretty much that's it. It's basically just a relations slider. So you can slide this up and down to make people like you or hate you. Pretty much. That's essentially how that works. And then you have your research tab. Pretty self-explanatory. That will affect your military research in here and how fast you research other types of military tech. That will also affect how fast you research nuclear missiles, if you do choose to go ahead and hit the research on that. So if you have research maxed out, it will take a way less amount of time than if you have it close to the non-existent side over here. So yeah, in the beginning, when your economy's really shit, I recommend just bumping down research as low as possible. And then if you can get a research treaty with one of the Western nations, then go ahead and do that, especially if you are a smaller country. You don't want to be spending a lot of money on research. And then tourism down here, once again, pretty self-explanatory. I recommend you max that out because that will increase the amount of money that you will make from tourism, and it will pretty much eventually pay for itself. So max out tourism if you can. So there we go. There's that. And we are already pulling a surplus, so we can go ahead and put it on tier 4 speed. And down here in the bottom, these are your speeds. Obviously, you have 4 levels, actually 5 levels, because one is a pause, of speeds that you can do. I find myself playing on T4 most of the time. I might move down to a T3 or 2 if I'm in a war, but most of the time, you're going to be playing on a T4. Alrighty, so there's that. Actually, whoa. Not so fast. Not so fast. Do not start your game after you do that. But yeah, as you can see, our economic health already jumped up just from lowering our interest level and bumping up our modifiers and everything like that. So yeah, there's that. So in the resources tab, each individual category, each individual sector has its own tax rate. Now, what I prefer to do is just set a flat tax rate for every single sector. And then if I want to raise taxes, I can just increase the global tax mod. That's the way I like to do it. And then you also have the option of making your enterprises government-owned or private. Now, I'm really not familiar with government economies, government-controlled economies, so I tend to just lean towards a 100% private model. However, if your economy is doing really good and your production is through the roof, absolutely through the roof, then being on a government-managed economic model isn't actually that bad. Because with a government economic model, say you are producing $100 million worth of tobacco and you're only consuming, say, 30 million. Then all of that will get sold, and instead of you making a certain percentage of that money through taxes, you will make 100% of that money since you are the government. You are the business. However, on the flip side, if you're doing really shit and your production is really low and you're not even meeting your own consumption, and then you have to import goods, you have to pay for that directly. Businesses aren't going to pay for that. You have to do it yourself. So that costs a shit ton of money. So if you're in a good economic standing, then actually switching over to a government model wouldn't be that bad. Although I wouldn't recommend it because I really don't know what the fuck, to do as a government model. I really am not too familiar with that. So I would just suggest going private and then setting a sector tax for each one of these sectors. Now, keep in mind, each one has its own sector tax. So if you click on one and say we set the cereal sector tax to 5%, right? Now, that's not going to set the sector tax for vegetables and fruits to 5%. No. So it's very individual, and you can't set a sector tax for a whole category. You have to go through and set it for each individual resource. So, also what I recommend you do right off the bat here is just legalize drugs. Legalize it, man. And then you can actually increase your production of drugs, and it's not that expensive, as you can see. Like, it's very cheap. 6 million. That is ridiculously cheap. But I would recommend that you get rid of your deficit before you start increasing your drugs production. But you can increase your drugs production very, very early on, and then you will end up owning like 60% of the drug market share, and you'll actually become pretty rich off of that. So yeah, anyways, we're just gonna put everything at a 5% flat tax. Now, here's the thing with sector taxes and just business taxes overall. You want to keep them between 5 and 15%. Anything above 15% becomes harmful and it slows down growth. Anything below 5% is great, and it's going to encourage growth even more. However, you're going to lose a lot of money if you don't have any taxes at all. So, just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. You should definitely have a low tax rate, but not so low to where you're not making any money. So 5 to 15% ideally. If you're in a crunch for some money, set it up to 15%. If you're in a real crunch for money, you could set up your sector tax to 20 or 25%, but only, and I mean only, do that if you are in a total war situation and you absolutely need money, because that is going to kill your economy. It's going to stunt growth. So yeah, just what I would recommend you do is set a 5% sector tax, like I said. So we'll just go ahead and do that, right? And I would recommend also that you keep everything private. Like I said, I'm not that familiar with government economic models, so I just prefer to keep everything private. It essentially just manages itself, whereas if you have a government model, you kind of have to delve into it a little bit more. So yeah, you can do research on the government economic model if you want to, but I'm really not that familiar with it. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and set all of these down. And yeah, like I said, like I mentioned before, you know, the increased production, you can increase the production of a particular resource. Now, note that it gets expensive. It gets really fucking expensive. Like, that right there is going to cost us $2 billion. Which would, what, nearly double, more than double, actually, our deficit. So, just be wary with that. If you can afford to increase production in an area, do it. By all means, do it. But if you can't, do not. Absolutely do not. So yeah, that's the basic terms of that. But as you can see, in certain areas where you have really low production, increasing the production of that actually is really cheap. So if you do that, you can actually kickstart that resource. So you can kickstart production in your country, which is actually a good thing. So like if we go to drugs, right? So that's going to stay low. It'll eventually increase because we have a low tax and things like that. It's legal. So our production is going to eventually increase. But if we just manually do it, it'll increase way faster, and then that'll kickstart the drugs market in our country. It'll kickstart drugs production. So yeah, there's that. Alright. So I'll just set the rest of these to 5%. Now keep in mind, this is going to mean that I'm going to make a lot less money. A way less amount of money. So I might actually end up having to raise the personal income tax here in a second. Alrighty, so there's that. We have a 5% flat tax rate. And then, like I said, if we need more money, in any case, we could just go ahead and bump up the global tax mod. So there's that. That's basically how to set up your economy to work for you. And let's just go ahead and fast forward it. Also, another thing to note, changes aren't instantaneous. Some changes aren't. So you might have to wait a day in-game for your changes to actually take effect. And it didn't look like that actually did much on our budget. Unless it hasn't... Oh, yep, there it is. Okay. That is what I mean, people. So, what you do, it takes a little bit to enact. So, I think I might have to higher my personal income tax rate up to 70%. Yeah, there we go. We can actually... we'll completely get rid of healthcare. Completely get rid of it. And then, we just want to pick away at our debt. That's the main goal. So at first, oh man, we're picking up corruption. Okay, we're going to hire government spending then. So in the beginning, you just want to pick away at your corruption and your debt. And just slowly do that. Slowly increase your infrastructure slider. Slowly increase your environment slider. Slowly increase your education slider. And then those will all benefit your economy. It'll lead to a higher GDP. It'll lead to more tax monies, etc. So yeah, there you go. As you can see, our corruption rate's dropping actually quite rapidly. And we're starting to make money. Starting to make more money because now we don't have to pay all of that money out in corruption. So yeah, that's pretty much the basics of this game. There really isn't all that much else to it. It gets a little bit more complicated, like I said, if you're playing as a third world country. But I highly recommend, if you are new to this game, you're just starting out, play as a Western country, you know, play as France. Play as someone who has a relatively strong economy, you know, play as France, play as one of the Scandinavian countries, they have a really strong economy, play as Canada, play as the US, Mexico, they're kind of hard. I wouldn't recommend Mexico as a first try, but yeah, just go with a Western nation. France, Germany, Scandinavia, Canada, US. All very, very great first choices, just so you can learn the game mechanics, and then you can move to something like Latvia, Russia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and playing as a really shitty country is actually a lot of fun. You'll come to find out, but in the beginning, don't do it. You're only going to end up screwing yourself. So yeah, I hope I explained that all well and good. Sorry this one was a little bit long, but I just felt like I had to explain each and every little thing. But that is really the ins and out of pretty much everything. I mean, you have your military over here. I didn't really show that all that much, but you can right-click if you have various units selected, and this is just very, very basic. Like, we can drag and drop there to move, or we can just right-click, move, occupy territory, and then we can merge all of our units. So this is very, very self-explanatory as far as the military tab goes, but for you to be able to go ahead and say, go to this island, what you have to do is you have to right-click and then bombard region, and your naval ships have to be close to that area for you to actually be able to bombard it. And only, and I mean only, when you are bombarding an area can you send troops over to that area. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Because I had a lot of trouble with the Navy and everything and trying to get my troops to move overseas. So you have to bombard the area that you want to move to be able to move your troops. So that really pissed me off in the beginning, and I didn't really understand that for quite some time. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop rambling on. If there's anything that you are still confused about, please go ahead and write me a comment. And if you have any tips or suggestions to me to go ahead and fix up my economic model, fix up something, or better explain the government/state-controlled government economic model. Jesus Christ. I just said government like a million times. I'm sorry, guys. It's late. It's late. But yeah, if you can explain the government model to me, then by all means do that. And if you have suggestions, by all means do that. If you want to just say thanks, hey, you know, thanks for helping me out getting started in SuperPower 2, then also feel free to do that. It really, really does mean a lot when you guys do that. And I really need that fuel to the fire. It truly, truly, truly does mean a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going to end this one off here. So, thank you guys just so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye!